Okay, 6:31 on the 2nd of August, 2021. We're here for a regularly scheduled select board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I still have. Okay, so we've got Jonathan with the general fund warrant.
I had the general fund warrant dated 7/29/2021 in the amount of $17,391.96. It's actually one of the smaller warrants that we've been getting. Some health and dental stuff on there, some life insurance, nothing really big. Just much general stuff. Make a motion we approve the warrant dated 7/29/2021 in the amount of $17,391.96.
Second?
Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Right,
Aaron.
payroll? All right, so we have two payroll warrants. The first is for dated July 23rd, 2021 in the amount of $24,705.31. And the second one is dated July 30th, 2021, and that's for $44,794.82. I'll make a motion that we approve these two payroll warrants for the amounts and dates stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I've got two miscellaneous warrants. We've got one from the Infrastructure Development Fund, or the LOT reserve, related to the Town Hall Cost Center. It's three invoices that add up to $5,283.60. If anybody has any specific questions before someone makes a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we have a Stonehouse warrant, a couple of electrical invoices. Green Mountain Power, $4,490.33, and that's related to setting or resetting some poles so we can get potable water into the Stonehouse.
Right.
Perfect. And then we got a Gosselin Electric invoice for $1,165.12, and it's for a temporary power setup for the temporary stage, but it's reusable to something to do with the Stonehouse.
So we're gonna have to buy a new socket meter and box for the pump house. So we're gonna use it for the temporary power. When we're done with it, it'll get transferred across the road for the new well.
Fair enough. Yeah. Spend the same money once instead of twice. That's good.
I got a question on that. So that Stonehouse money, or is that like a grant fund, or how does that like money work? Can that just be used, or does it have to be directly for the Stonehouse type stuff? Or?
It was set up just to do work on that Bay Park.
Does it classify the whole Bay Park, or is it just like Stonehouse renovation?
I mean, that was my understanding, but we don't really have any.
So
we
the
don't
way
have
that
a
it's
written
worked out,
policy on it.
the way that it's worked over time is the initial contribution came from Jeff Davis
Mm-hmm.
in regard to some interesting things that happened as Walmart was developed, let's say. And that money was put aside for whatever originally for the Stonehouse, I guess, but
It
not
wasn't really
specifically.
defined. They just said the Stonehouse. You're right. So if you want, we probably could
A previous
spend the
board,
winter defining it more.
a previous board that I was on said not only should we restrict that money for just the Stonehouse as a way of doing the windows and doors and working on the roof, and we got a grant for the cupola that cost $20,000 to refinish, and we're making strides. We also said that any proceeds related to the memorial and gift policy we created for the parks, like you buy a bench for $5,000, the bench doesn't cost $5,000. The profit, if you will, goes into the Stonehouse fund. Alan and John raised $40,000 in sponsorship money. That went into the Stonehouse fund this year.
Car show money goes into
Car show.
it.
A lot of money.
Money goes into it.
So we're
Roof fest, everything goes into Stonehouse.
so I went around on Bay Day. You guys heard my whole story. One thing I went around and I bought something from every vendor, and I asked them what's one thing that would stop you from coming back. And the only person that had anything to say in relation to that question was somebody that said we need potable water because the fact that we can't fill our machines and get our mixes ready, and we have to truck it in. It's a pain. And most other places, it's not a problem. And when I told him, we're working on it, we're going to drill a well, we're boring under the road, it's happening, and he said, okay, great, be back. So it's maybe a little bit of a liberty to say that the potable water for the stone house is directly related to it, but I would say, I mean, it's close enough, given that, you know, to take the next step on the stone house to fully revitalize it. We know in our request to Welch's office is in the low 7 figures. If you really wanted to gut the thing and do it 100% and raise the 2 roofs and really make it what we think we want it to be. So we've kind of used this money as a means of doing what we can year to year and trying to chip off. Like we're gonna do the windows and the doors this year. We're gonna get it weather tight, I think is what the board said 2 years ago. Go ahead.
Windows and doors have already been done.
Right.
Yeah, it's done. And now it's time to.
And the board earlier this year said you wanted infrastructure done for the stone house.
Right.
And I said that we're doing electrical work in the well.
Right.
So.
Oh, we're right
I thought
there.
it was already a
Yeah.
done deal, so.
So, did we make a motion, Jen, to approve this yet, or was it still out there?
Oh, she's not on today, but
Okay.
I don't think you did. You
Awesome.
asked. No, let's just say you did. I don't remember.
Okay, fair
It was
enough.
on the other warrant
So-
that you did that.
Stonehouse warrant dated August 2nd, 2021, in the amount of $5,655.45.
So moved.
To approve. Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So those are our miscellaneous warrants for tonight. Let's move on to minutes. We've got. Remind me tomorrow. We've got the minutes of Monday, July 19th in front of us. Does anybody have any corrections?
Nope, no corrections.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Need a second.
Yep, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay. So public comment. Seeing that there's no one from the public other than Mr. Drew's lovely wife.
She
on
might
Zoom.
have a public comment.
Do you have a public comment, Amanda?
Oh, she's got her hand up.
I do.
Okay, let's hear it.
There's a lot of people griping on the St Albans page about the stormwater bill, having no idea about the town meetings. I put on there's a town meeting tonight, a select board meeting tonight. Maybe you should get involved and voice your opinions there or concerns there. I don't know, maybe you can do something on the town website or the town Facebook page, and like put a reminder up, hey, we're gonna have a select board meeting if,
We
have
do
any
that.
questions, that way there's no excuses to say we didn't know.
Yeah.
Like you guys advertise the farmer's market,
So
they
let's-
see that, so I'm sure that they're gonna see the town meeting, you want people to get engaged, don't you? As you can see, I'm the only one on here.
So I'm gonna give
That you guys would
I'm
like
gonna
to-
I'm gonna give props to the city. One thing they do is that all of their major boards and commissions, they do Facebook events, and they put right in the description the Zoom link, and then as soon as the agenda is approved, they usually copy and paste the agenda into the event, whatever the event profile. If we could start doing that, at least for select board and maybe planning commission, I don't think DRB, anybody that really needs to be noticed, has to be effectively noticed
They are,
by
yeah.
mail. So,
Yep, we can try that.
yeah, that's a good point, Amanda.
I was gonna ask, go ahead, Amanda, if you're,
Do you have another
That's
question?
all.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I was gonna ask, what did we do for outreach? I know there was I saw tons of stuff in the messenger.
Yep.
I feel, did we, something is.
I'll let Corey take
we
that.
spent $5,000 to mail to everybody who got a bill 2 postcards.
That's what I recall, so everybody, not just
Yeah.
me.
Correct.
Which is probably as aggressive a step we've ever taken in informing people on something.
And we've been in the
It's what we did
messenger.
with the town hall, so
Yeah, we
9 stories in the messenger since the ordinance passed, at least 9. We had a BT Digger story. We hit social media. Pretty much everything short of knocking on their doors and letting them know.
And the mailing list, is that based off of registered voters, or is it based off of, okay.
Property
People who
owners.
own the property.
Okay.
And we get the exact same people whose
Yep.
names on the bill
Mm-hmm.
got the
Got,
postcard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everyone who got a bill over $1,000 got a letter in addition to
Mhm.
explain to them the credit process and all of that.
Mhm.
In advance of the bill.
in advance of the 2 postcards.
Right.
They got the first letter because we wanted to give them and Emily the time to apply for credits and do what they needed to do before bills went out.
So we have an opportunity to look back on how we implemented the utility and use that information to form opinions and direction on how we want to do future things. We identified one of our major fiscal hurdles for this year to be the funding the DPW equipment replacement fund with property tax increases, namely. The one thing I've heard over and over from everyone that's reached out, not to complain but to talk about the utility, has said is, why didn't we get to vote on it? So I'm thinking that hearing that so much, it's maybe incumbent on us to educate people on what the fund is, why it needs to be funded, and how much it's going to cost, what the end cost is to the taxpayer. And I think in learning what happened with the utility, not that the utility should have been voted on by voters, being that it was an ordinance, it couldn't be.
Right.
But I think this decision, given that we just raised fees and then we're about to raise taxes, I think it's the one tax increase in St Albans Town that has a chance of surviving a ballot question. If there was any, paying cash for trucks in perpetuity is just I think that resonates with everyone as being a good thing. So we might, as we discuss that in October, we might want to weigh what we're hearing about the utility and when we make the decision on how to proceed with that. Either way, I think it's going to pass, be implemented, and funded, but it's how we go about it. So, does anybody else have a public comment? I think everybody in this room pays taxes to the town of St. Albans, so. All right, so hearing none, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Perfect. So the first item we have on here, planning, was a little incomplete. So there is a planning commission letter in your packet, but also Corey has some planning news that he would like to share. So we're going to
really
start
we
with
only
that.
needed one agenda item, but 2 got put in, but
Yeah.
it actually worked out. We were informed Friday afternoon we received the grant to do the scoping study for the St. Albans Health Path. Again, as a reminder, that's going to be a $60,000 engineering project. The state will pay 80% of it. So for $48,000 to the town. When you guys approved the letter, we talked then that we would make the local match out of the engineering budget within
It's $12,000.
$12,000.
So does that scope the whole path? Let's do it.
So
It is
I
good
think
news.
all we're looking for here is just a motion to have Carrie sign that we're going to accept the grant, and we've got to we got to go out to bid. It could be cheaper. We got to go out to bid and have the work done and get that rolling. So that's that piece. I don't know if you guys want to take care of that now, or we want to do the next one. Or...
Yeah, I think be a toss-up between Aaron and Jessica who deserves to make that motion to accept that grant more. So I guess one of you make the motion, the other one second, as former planning commission chair, and then
You're
I'll-
muted, Jessica.
I'll make a motion to accept the grant to scope the health path. And just to add, I'm so happy and excited that this is happening.
It's
I
awesome.
think it's a great project.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we can go home now, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Everything's done.
We paid the bills, paid payroll. We're all good to go.
Yeah.
Done now.
The next item is also
And-
planning commission.
And next item B is not anything you guys need to take action on. It's just to inform your decisions as you start to put the budget together. But you asked us when we passed the bike and ped master plan update in May to look at various funding sources and come back with a proposal from the planning commission. Obviously you guys make the final policy, but we looked at 8 different funding streams. We did research across the country, and realistically we probably have the best revenue stream to pay for something like that already in the local option tax. A lot of communities set up local option tax just to fund this kind of stuff. And so the planning commission recommended an aggressive amount, but didn't make it perpetual so that it can be revised. But they asked to put a question on that. They recommended that the select board put a question on the ballot in March to ask for 25% of the LOT to go into a special reserve fund, which can be spent on bike and ped infrastructure for 5 years, and then reevaluate. And so that was just their recommendation, and they're putting it in front of you. So ultimately, the decision's up to you. But they thought roughly that'd be $250,000 a year, and if you could use the fund for engineering, it would ease up some of the budget pressures we have in the general fund budget, especially because we wouldn't be able to do the scoping study without the grant. We only have between Allen and Cary, we only have $45,000 budget for engineering, which when this project's going to be a $60,000 project, so it requires grant money to make any kind of progress. So this would allow us to get stuff designed and built, and then it hopefully build up in a fund so that if we were investing in a larger project, you can save up the money for a couple of years. But I know we have to look into how LOT dollars have to be approved by the voters. So
I think it's a fair suggestion. The question is, I had 2 questions related to the memo, and then if anybody else has anything to add. For the Planning Commission's consideration, because it's going to be an ongoing discussion from now until we make a decision of what we're going to put in the ballot. Should it be 25% of local option tax receipts on a gross or net after debt service?
they were asking for gross,
Right.
because net's about, if you think of, we're close to $1 million net. The debt service is about 25%, so it still leaves half the LOT open for other funds for those 5 years plus other things.
Now, in the question, this is my second question, how do we phrase the question, and what is our intent in creating the funding source? Is it for the select board and the town administration to be able to use it as needed without a vote on specific projects, or is it to create a pot of money designated for it, and any project to be paid for with that money still has to go to the voters?
It's to create a pot of money and to have flexibility in staff. So if we wanted to engineer a project, or if you guys decided, you know what, let's go build the bay side, we have a little bit of this and we want to build the sidewalks in the bay system, or something comes up, just makes a lot of sense. We have that flexibility, similar to you do like with the truck funds.
Yeah.
The money goes into a fund, it's for that purpose, and define it. The other thing was setting up the fund. We're still working regional planning and others that if there can be solutions to be had on some of their development stuff with Act 250, folks could potentially make a deposit into that fund instead of building that other infrastructure. We're not there yet.
We're working to that effect.
We're working to that effect. So it creates a fund that other dollars for bike and ped could go into that would specifically be built on that. I think too, like going after a grant, right now there's a grant and we're not going to have the ability to go after it because we don't have the design. We'll go after something small in it, but it's unlimited. We could aggressively go and the state won't, might not necessarily have a match, doesn't need the match, but we could have asked for $250,000 to build a section of the health path if it was already designed. And, we're missing those opportunities by not having things engineered. And
So you want it to be an unrestricted fund?
I want it to only be spent on bike and ped infrastructure and everything that goes into that. So that's easement acquisition,
all the pre-development
all the
stuff.
pre-stuff engineering, and then ultimate construction.
So not to prematurely speak for this board, but I think we're in concurrence with what the planning commission's recommended, at least to some effect. There might be some debating on the caveat of net or gross and whatever. We might get into
the amount
weeds.
can be debated,
Right.
but
Right.
the
So
premise sounds good.
we made 950 last year, 943, whatever. That fund has proven that even through a pandemic recession, it's fairly recession proof.
Well,
So the thought is, if we're going to spend about $200,000 a year for 15 years or so on the town hall debt service, and we allocate another 25% of gross receipts to this, it still leaves us with $500,000 to spend on water and sewer. And when this tax was implemented, I can remember being a kid at BFA, and the discussion at my kitchen table was this can be used for sidewalks and water and sewer and to grow the grand list. The point of the tax was to use the tax to grow the commercial sector, to improve our overall grand list, to lower our taxes. It was quite literally a circular thing of, we're going to have people from out of town come into the commercial district, spend money, we're going to take 1% of that money and use it to solve infrastructure needs, to increase the commercial district, to get more taxes out of the commercial user that doesn't add children to the school system, which will in turn increase the amount of people that come here, that will spend more money for us to collect, to solve problems, to grow the infrastructure. So it's basically related to growing the north and south growth centers with sidewalks and water and sewer infrastructure.
yeah, and the piece too is it's roughly about $1 million over 5 years. So it's
It's
a
a
good chunk,
serious-
and if we can go leverage grant and other opportunities, it could make a lot of progress. And I think making progress on bike and ped will help for that flexibility. You know, the other thing when people think about it is it's clear that applications are getting held up in Act 250 for bike and ped. So some of these bike and peds are already built across lots that are advantageous for the town. It might actually increase the opportunity for that property to get developed. So we know it's a priority of the select board. You guys have asked the planning commission to do a lot of work on it. Since the planning commission in the letter you'll read sensitive to increasing property taxes and other things and understand, don't really want to go back to, we know that the select board, at least, you know, likely the majority wouldn't be for increasing the, you know, basically permitting charges there, the lost the
Impact
phrase,
fee.
impact fees. We know
Yeah.
that you know didn't go over well. So, you know, really it very easily comes down to some towns across America. It's interesting in the research, make the homeowner pay for their sidewalk in front of their house and tell them they come and do annual inspections and make them fix any crack, anything like that. And so I didn't think that was palatable for
Probably not.
we didn't think that was palatable
Yeah.
for the group.
Probably
So
not.
this just seemed like, you know, the best way. And then the engineering, because when you talk about pressures on the property tax, if you could use a little bit of this money to do some of the engineering, you know, and you could set a guideline on that too and approval, but it's to not.
I guess start working on the framework of a question
Yeah.
for the planning commission and then the select board to entertain. Maybe
Yep, I mean, I know the planning commission has consistently been saying LOT is the way to go. I think that the piece that may have been missing for the select board previously, there was a push to look at impact fees as a way of having more than just the LOT and having people have a sense of stake in the process. So I think by having it be a fund where Act 250 dollars could end up being held for these projects as a way of meeting that need or that desire to see more dollars put in and from other directions and from, you know, people who are doing developments. So I was pleased to see the memo, and I'm excited about this.
it seems like it's finally formalizing something that has lived in draft capital plans and whatnot for a long time. And this is about 2.5 times the amount of money that we had in our original CIP. So it's
Yeah, I mean, $100,000
it's not
honestly
enough.
going to move anything forward.
We either have to commit to it as a priority or we don't. And we're going to commit to it as a priority because it's a priority. We'll spend it in ways that make sense, in areas that make sense, and you know we'll have to work to earn the voter support on getting them to unrestrict it. I don't know. There might need to be language in that question that over a certain amount of money needs to go before the voters, like contributions to a project over $250,000 or something like that. Just a trigger, because that again, we're hearing that the community feels that the voters need to still have a say in how they're governed, and this is, you know, so if we can find a middle ground. So I guess we should not debate the funding source, and should instead turn to exactly how much and by what question.
And ultimately projects, you know, during our budget process.
Because we'll need projects to sell people on
Correct.
the implementation. You know, if you approve this, you will get this within 5 years.
We're hoping the framework is that the board supports that, and as it goes on and we have the engineering, it's not if we do a project, it's which project do we do and why, what is most important, what's the most important project. Or
Well,
are
after
there
a while,
grants?
it'll just get looked at the $500,000 a year we spend on paving. Nobody has ever come up to me in 5 years now and said, this town spends $500,000 on paving roads, that's a waste, and it's bureaucracy and all the other things. Eventually people will see us implement good projects that people use, and you see it get used, and it'll be built in a way that makes sense for St Albans Town. Like this health path, we're not talking a 3-foot wide sidewalk. We're talking an 8 to 10 foot wide paved path from the complex in one way or another, all the way to Hardack, and maybe even eventually to the rail trail if we can
The
acquire the
scoping study
easements.
we'll design it all the way to the rail trail. So
Oh.
we'll be able to look at it in sections.
Right.
Yes.
So we'll be able to, you know, you look at Williston, they've got their, it looks like it's 8 to 10 feet paved path. And if you look at where Aspen Dental and Panera Bread and all those other places were, that wasn't built when that path was put in, is my recollection. And I was a young kid when that all happened, but I mean,
I remember.
I mean,
it's a development tool.
I mean, the path was chosen because as a top priority because it addresses so many of the needs. It requires getting across the Sash at a place where people want to get it. It connects the complex to BFA.
Well, we've got a major landowner owner in there in the Smith family, willing to give up easements immediately because they know what a path running along the corridor of their property that would have people on it all the time, using it in one way or another, does to the marketability of their land. You know, so it's working with private landowners to improve quality of life without raising taxes. That's
And
what it
large
comes down
employers,
to.
I mean, NMC employees will be able to go for walks and
Well, the school district, all of a sudden, you send the kids up Fairfield Street, and I put it in an email, not too long ago, in a group email with some city officials, that it would make sense that the city partner with the town on the health path, and their partnership would look like extending their existing sidewalks to the path. Alleviate our issue, allow their residents to access it, and allow people visiting to access the downtown via the existing pedestrian network. So it's an area where the city and town could cooperate, and it could be pretty. I mean, that path would be a game changer. You look at what we have at the Bay Park. We have a 5-foot paved path around the park that's used 365 days a year. I mean, it's trampled down into sheets of ice before we can even maintain it in the winter because people use it when there's 6 inches of fresh snow. So we know that if you build it, it will come. And, Jessica, as a Rise Vermont coordinator, has pointed us to resources that prove that, investing in pedestrian infrastructure and recreation amenities improve your quality of life and your property values. So it's a good economic decision too, over time. So now that I've talked too much on that particular area, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
No, you said it all.
And then some.
All right, we'll move on. This is another fairly positive note. ARPA money, or the Fed money that we have applied for. We did not get any new news on that, but what did happen recently, and I should have put this in the red in your staff notes, was that there's a decision that most people might not find very exciting, but that local county government, I should say, does not exist substantially in Vermont, and so the towns themselves and municipalities in the state of Vermont are going to be getting that money directly.
That was a really cool email to read from Senator Leahy's office.
It was.
Secretary Yellen called the senator last night to tell him that. That's pretty cool.
So what that means for those that don't really speak municipal geek quite as much as we do is we're going to get more money directly. Do you remember the amounts, Corey? I don't
it's
remember
just shy of $2 million.
as opposed to below $1 million before. So
And the
It's like 1987 or something.
yeah.
some of the money was going to come to us directly. The majority of it was going to get worked through the county government,
Correct.
which would have been a nightmare for Vermont as a
It
whole.
would have been difficult.
So
That's something. So to that end, at our last meeting, we discussed briefly scheduling meetings with 2 neighborhood towns. We're looking for willing partners in the region, and Brendan and I have meetings with the village of Swanton and the town of Georgia in the next month.
Great.
Just to try to start some collaboration.
We're going to Swanton Village on Monday. We'll report on that at our next regular meeting. We're going to Georgia the very following meeting, and we're going to report on that our first meeting in September. So, and add to that, our narrative is simply that we're looking for a reasonable and willing partner to collaborate on water and sewer to serve the general area. And I would add, lastly to that the village of Swanton, I had a really good 45-minute conversation with their manager, Reg Bellevue, and he reiterated the fact that the village sees their infrastructure as a public good, and they know that if they allow capacity in their facility to be tied up in another community, that the growth related to that will boil back over into Swanton in a positive way. They had that debate at length over the Franklin County State Airport in Highgate. They decided to fund, to give the allocation and agree to extend the water and sewer lines with no special fees or anything like that. So it's exciting to be able to talk partnership with them, and there's several areas that we could do that in. And we had a discussion over maybe a decentralized sewer system near their south end and our north end in the growth center, to be able to be used on certain maybe commercial and high density residential uses maybe. And it's really exciting to work with Swanton because they've got the staff in place and the know-how to maintain this infrastructure that we could learn a lot. And I think we'll find that if we do partner with them, they will be willing to teach us. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to Monday. But sorry to steal your.
No, that's it. I mean, we want the message to be brief, if possible. So it's very well done. So D on our agenda is a stormwater utility update, and Corey and I are both here to. Most of us in this room understand what we've done to provide outreach. We have been getting quite a bit of feedback. Some of it based not entirely on fact. So we're hoping to just kind of give our little 5-minute commercial on why we started this utility. And I think that's what seems to resonate. And Emily's been confirming this with a lot of people who come in and are not aware of why we did it. Why did they get that? In most cases, a $50 bill, and in some, it's a little bit more. But the big, I don't want to oversimplify it too much, but this is a federal law that has trickled down to the state, and the state is saying to us, you shall fund stormwater. You shall. Not if you feel like it, if you want to be a good partner, you will do this. And there's only 2 ways to fund it. One is entirely on the general fund or the back of the property tax owners, owners. Or the second is to do a utility, which more fairly distributes it across everyone who gets water that falls on their land. That means the state of Vermont, the schools, the hospitals, the churches, and everyone in between. So I guess that's a simple, I don't know how much more I want to go into it, but for me, that's what makes it palatable to pay the $50. When I support stormwater, I want to use this water quality effort wisely, and I think that we're trying to do this as expeditiously as we can. And I kind of want to leave it at that. I don't know if you want to add a lot more. Corey's been working very closely with Emily to work out some of the bugs in our system. I mean, there's some credits. And Emily explains them very well. She's good at doing that, both on the phone, in person. We've had a few people come in. I don't know. You want to add some more to that?
No, I mean it is, everything that Carrie said it's a requirement. We have to pay for it somehow, and this was probably the most palatable way to pay for it, considering the state of Vermont pays $87,000 for its roads and everything. The city of St Albans pays for its infrastructure. The town pays for its infrastructure. Some people say, "Oh, that's on our property tax," but the town is already paying almost the amount of money the town has to pay in things like fees and permits and other things we had to do for stormwater that now get shifted to the utility. So it just kind of cycles back. I mean, we're the 7th municipality to do it in the state. It's not new, and we certainly won't be the last.
And our agriculture credit, for the record, is.
And we designed the planning commission. Only one other town had an agricultural credit, and it was 10%. We gave 35% because we understand how important agriculture is to the community. And all they have to do is be in good standing with the state of Vermont on their water quality measures. So they don't have to go through the engineering or building ponds or doing the other things that some of the other credits have to go through. So they just need to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, water quality. And Emily's been great because she's got 2 farmers to agree. She can go out and meet with them and help them get more credits if they make small investments in some of their infrastructure I don't know exactly what the practices are, but she said she's there to be a partner and help them, and so there's opportunity for them to get more than 35% off because there's some other credits to get 50% off their bills, and so a lot of traffic's been around that in town and town hall. I think it's new, but again, it was communicated, and it's unfortunately we had to pay for it somehow. So it's just doing that, and again, a reminder to everybody: the vast majority of the money budgeted goes to projects. I believe only 20-25% goes to overhead. The vast majority is going into projects and engineering and permitting costs. So it's not raising money just to pay someone to be in town hall. It's raising to actually go out and do projects. I mean, Emily just sent in a notice to get a $300,000 grant for one of our biggest projects this week. So we don't know if it'll be successful, but my guess for the water quality money is she'll I don't want to put the pressure on her, but my anticipation is she'll pull back 50 to 100% of what the town invests back in federal dollars with this money, And that's when we'll start to see progress.
And you hire in professional trained staff that have done this before.
Mhm.
Emily comes from an active utility in South Burlington.
Yep.
She's found areas where we were lacking. We had no idea we were lacking. It was our
Correct.
understanding we didn't need a phosphorus control plan. We
Right.
found out when Emily got here that we were a year behind on submitting it.
Right.
We got a year extension. We didn't know that the state of Vermont owed us $25,000 as part of a program. Emily's going to get us the back pay
Mhm.
and the future pay. We're going to get a check for 50. I mean, it's just things that, we might pay Emily the second most of any employee in the town government. But the amount of money that she's capable of bringing back into this community is almost limitless when you calculate it against her costs.
And those
She
other
will more
pieces-
than pay for herself.
If we didn't do a stormwater utility and we paid for it out of the general fund, we wouldn't qualify for the $25,000 a year. The state of Vermont, this is new last year, just gives every utility $25,000 for just having a utility to help fund projects. And Emily found out because you guys put one in September of last year, we qualify for the ordinance being in place. So we're gonna get $50,000 this fiscal year, just for that. So that alone is $50,000 coming to the town. We know 25,000 in the out years, and like I said, the grant. There's a lot of water quality money, and a lot of it has to go to these projects. So, we're looking at, the phosphorus control plan has been awarded. It's going out. That'll be done next April. But we know one of the major projects in our growth center and in a community that a lot of people have concerns with. We were applying for the grant funding to take care of that, and hopefully it turns out and we can be constructing that next spring.
Wow.
So more question for Emily, but besides it being mandated, obviously, there's hopefully some positive water quality improvements.
Absolutely.
Is there any way to answer when that might may actually see that? What kind of
When it'll trickle down.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, is it reasonable in 10 years or maybe there's no more green algae? That might be way too
I mean,
specific.
so the stormwater issues are only going to take care of, I believe, about 35% of the phosphorus issues in the state of Vermont. 28% or so just comes from natural land, and then a good chunk comes from agriculture. We know those things, so this is a way of addressing that 35%. And unfortunately, these things are expensive. But yeah, I mean, it's all beneficial. I mean, basically what we're doing is building swamps across the town so that the water can sit there and be yucky there, and it filters through and then comes out clean on the other end when it hits the light. That's effectively the whole really kind of simplified version of it. But
Another thing,
You don't clean your fish tank out.
right.
That's true though. Yeah.
another thing we keep hearing, the city's infrastructure has a general discharge permit into the marsh. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an elephant in a room, and every time we discuss water quality is the town of St Albans. It's but that's something the voters have brought up. So I don't know if there's a way as we go about our business to maybe anytime we find any generally useful information related to that, anytime there is a discharge, what does partially treated mean? Work with the city to define exactly what they're discharging and when and how, and to educate people on it, because most people think raw sewage comes out of that pipe 365 days a year, and that's why the bay's a mess, and that's just not the truth.
And to be clear, that's not our infrastructure either as a town.
It's not.
It's city infrastructure. So we've seen the comments, is this going to fix that problem? No, it will not, because that's the city of St. Albans.
And you could say that
issue.
they pledged their grand list in a bond vote 2 years ago to raise $18 million to do improvements in that sewer plant, and a lot of it was related to issues like this. So they say. I don't know the science.
Well, and some of it was required.
Engineering.
I mean, they, like us, direct discharges were asked to also up their game.
Yeah, so
It didn't amount to a huge percentage, but it did address
So
some of the
that-
naughty.
if we do get 3 inches of rain some night this summer, and they do have to do a controlled release, maybe work with Marty Manahan to understand what that release was, how many gallons, what partially treated means. Just do a general education piece with it on behalf of the city, since it's not something that usually comes from City Hall.
Well, I mean,
They
what
just
we
do it.
just to be clear, what we normally get on a monthly basis, it doesn't ever, nobody asks for this, is a monthly report from them. The water and sewer plant people have to submit something like that. Like Brian will do that to us now. Will send that to us now.
For the website.
They tell you whenever that discharge happens in that monthly report, along with at least 3 other reports that look like a really huge Excel spreadsheet that's way beyond me. So I sent it to Emily. with stormwater and engineering background to look at.
Well, usually when these discharge happens, it happens from Rutland to Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's millions and millions of gallons. that
It
get
is,
dumped into
and
the-
they're required every single month. Even
Right.
the prison system is included in that because that's under their license. So we're aware of
Are
those
those
things.
reports technically, are they,
Those are all public.
They're all
but are
public.
they very technical and hard to understand?
Yeah, they pretty much are.
Yeah.
But I mean, except the cover sheet,
And,
cover letter.
and people who are
Get
paying
it.
online have emails to probably more if we're collecting. Emily knows that the education doesn't stop. We're going to continue to educate the community about stormwater.
Well, lake lessons.
Yeah, and then, well, even on our website, we're
Mhm.
going to dedicate to all the projects getting done. We're going to tell people how much the project costs, what the process was to bid it out, and the whole thing. And we're going to talk about where the funding source came from. So if we got grants, or a private landowner might fund some of it, and the state might fund some of it, or
Then we get to the depressing part where we spent $1 million to take 10 pounds of phosphorus out of the water. I mean,
And
that's
then
Well,
we're going to talk
that's
about
true.
how much phosphorus that project will clean up and what that project was designed to do, so people can, we're going to be transparent in all of that, so they'll know. I mean, these gravel wetlands, the Tanglewood one's going to be about $600,000 to do. When people are like, well, what, you should be able to build these ponds, they shouldn't be that expensive. To actually, from beginning to end, it's about a 600, what RL Valley. Yeah. These new gravel wetland, because what they do now, and this is how they collect the phosphorus, it's not just slowing down the water.
Mhm.
It's they build like 18 inches of stone, and then they put, it depends on the engineering how much stone they actually need and the velocity of water. They also put, again, a layer of natural swamp material, which is really expensive, so it actually filters like a swamp all the way down through, and then it has its outlet. So it's not just a pond to slow down water anymore. It's really the filtration. The best example, most visible example of it is off exit 19 by Mobile. You can watch that. That's effectively, you got to build probably 15 or 20 of those across the community in the coming decade and a half.
And our DPW has one, and it works well.
I'm about to build one in Highgate for a
And so
storage
when
building. I
when
mean,
they're built
it's-
up like
people-
DPWs,
Yep.
they just look like a natural swamp.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's what they, once the
That's-
vegetation takes and all of it
Yep.
comes, and then, then the money in 10 years or 15 years is going to be redoing them all, and Alan's crew's going to have a lot of work to go in and clean them all out, and the utility is going to pay Alan's crew for their time, so the town's not giving that.
Well, the
It's
real question is, does the utility end up with its own staff? Because DPW has enough road maintenance items to address without having to clean
In
it.
some
not
cases,
not at
yes,
this point, but
but-
maybe.
I
Someday
mean,
when maintenance is our full-time thing, but right now it's building, and
fair enough.
Right. Yep. That's
Anybody
it.
have
I
any?
think it's just important to try to show it. It's $50 doesn't be more paying down the road. There's improvement.
Mhm.
It's all over. But what this lake looks like, I think a lot of people.
I mean, the conversation would be very
supportive.
different if the bay was green right now. We're lucky it's not, but this is,
We implemented this in September. Or at least,
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
progress.
sure.
It's true. So anyway, if
Is
someone,
it
if you
though?
get contacted, send them to Emily. She's
Yeah.
great at explaining the why. We have a really robust amount of
That was
information
the
on
most
website,
important
too.
thing that anybody said. If anybody has any questions related to this, send them to Emily.
I think
That's
that's
the
the
most
best
important.
person to answer the question. I really.
I
Corey
tried
can-
to sit there for 40 minutes and explain to somebody that
Yeah.
didn't want to hear me out, and just to hear Emily break it down. Like, this
She
is
does.
this is the math and this is the science.
Mhm.
How do you want to argue with that? And then most people say, okay, you got to do it. It's an unfunded mandate from government's a lot larger than ours.
This is just a more fair way to assess
I mean,
that.
we're literally incorporated to take care of unfunded mandates from the state of Vermont. This is one of them. Plowing
we
municipal
are.
roads
Yes.
is an unfunded mandate from the state of Vermont.
Mhm.
Having local land use is an unfunded mandate from the state of Vermont. It all, when you boil it down, that's what municipal government is. It's an incorporated entity to handle unfunded mandates, and that's what we're doing here.
That sounds so fun.
75% of the state's budget
Oh my
is from mandates from the feds.
Yeah,
So-
Did
literally.
you have something to add, Jessica?
I just had a quick question, and you might have said it and I missed it. How
Okay.
many retention ponds are in the town right now? I remember it being a kind of a big number.
I don't know how many. I could have Emily get that back to you, but we only own less than a handful as town. A lot of them are private, but a lot of those are older standards where they retain water, not filter the water. So So we've got two plans, the flow restoration, which slows down the water, and then the phosphorus control plan, and a lot of the projects will be the same, slow down the water and filter the phosphorus out. And so that's what has to get constructed. But I don't know how many private ones we have in the town.
I don't even think anybody at the state of Vermont's capable of answering that question within a week. Like,
We have an idea.
it's a rough idea.
Right.
We're getting better. Emily's working on GISing all the ones she comes across, and when the credits come in and all that, they'll go in our GIS system.
And logging every complaint, every question, logging any changes. So
If you can
be
circulate those
data-driven.
those polymorphic reports, a lot of the value in what
Yeah,
we
we're-
were sold on.
Yes.
We're cleaning up the final reports we're looking at today, but just gotta make sure the tags are applied. Like I know Emily got 400 emails last week. I don't know how many of them were specific to billing, but
Fair enough.
if you want to think of that piece, so she's got to tag a few, but
Is there a way to see like who and what department uses polymorphic and
Oh,
how
absolutely.
they use
yeah.
it?
So they're building the management dashboard for
Yep.
us right now.
So as soon as we can see that, that'd be great because if we could realize that Megan on average receives 20 calls a day, but Molly and Molly and assessing might receive 25. Like we didn't realize that assessing gets more calls than zoning. And there could be things that could better educate us when it comes time to make policy decisions.
Yeah.
Emily's the rock star right now. She wins that one.
She's
so.
getting a lot. I mean, I probably directed 2 or 3 phone calls a day. That just referred up to us back down to her. And I know Carrie had visits and I had visits. My guess is we probably had about 55 visits last week between phone calls and visits.
And it's just nice to be able to see people coming into town hall.
Well, I actually said that, and I don't know. First, that person looking at me thought I was maybe kidding. I was not. I'm like, I'm glad you're asking questions and listening to the answers. It's refreshing.
So when folks ask,
Truly is.
what's this stormwater utility and how come we haven't heard about it? It was just discussed at like the 59th meeting in the last 2 years, in a very public session with
Yes.
a warned agenda.
Mhm.
And it was on the agenda.
I mean, without
On
spending
purpose, yeah.
5 and tens of thousands more dollars, I mean, that effectively.
We are purposefully putting this on our agenda to give people an opportunity to come and essentially ream us out if they so choose.
Or
and
in
nobody's
person.
here.
That's the beauty right now, right, of local government. We're not very far away.
You can send us an email.
they
I
can-
mean,
Get eyeball
we've
to
had
eyeball.
a special information thing, so when you go to our website, not only you don't have to dig for it, there's a right now you could pay your bill, but before that was an education, like it popped right up.
Mhm.
Learn more
Saw
about
that.
the stormwater utility. It wasn't something I had to go dig for on the
Right.
website. It was right there.
that got
Speaking
annoying.
of that,
after-
I went to the website because the bill I got directed me to check it out. So I went there and saw the pop up to pay the bill online. I'm like, great, let's give that a try. So I tried it, and it was really straightforward and easy to do. I think the only question I had is it polymorphic system for accepting the payments, or is it going through like eSecure or Stripe? Okay.
So it's polymorphic, but it's a Stripe, which is like a PayPal type business, and then daily whatever was deposited in gets deposited into the town's account, and then because Nemrick is the other software, Anna has to go in individually, but it's sort of a check coming in the mail. She just has to log it into Nemrick that account's been paid.
Okay.
Last stormwater question.
Oh, I just,
Sorry.
I'm wondering, because I'm used to when I go online and pay bill online or buy something online, it'll say like where it's going through sometimes, if it's using, or it has like it's verified like what this program is. I think just for people to know what the system is, even just having a logo that they can check out the website and know, okay, this is a legit website. It's not just going off into some ether.
The Stripe. I mean, I think most businesses end up using Stripe's a pretty big company now that does
People will
online
recognize that hopefully and be like, okay,
Yeah, it's
That's
trusted.
how-
It's
yeah.
instilling confidence as we move towards a new payment platform. I mean,
Right.
this is new for us. It's new for our
And
customer.
Some people have complained why we're not taking other things online yet. We're
Uh-huh.
still making sure we work out the bugs
Right.
in this one,
Yeah,
making
yeah.
sure that Anna
Right.
and everyone's confident and how
Yep.
to account for all the money coming in online before we add dog licenses and property taxes
Yep.
and all
So
that.
here's
it
a
was
question.
very smooth. So it's a good process.
Are we still pulling from the general fund to fund the utility, like staff, like payroll for next payroll cycle? Is Emily's coming out of the utility or still the general fund?
We have it coming at it. We budgeted the general fund piece till September. I don't honestly know what the balance is today. Anna was out today on
That's
stormwater
fine.
utility, but
Do you think by October 1st we could see it?
easily. But the issue we're having now, and it's an internal one, is doing payroll. My guess is you'll see the general fund get reimbursed
From the
monthly or
utility.
quarterly from the utility for payroll. I don't know the system that well, but my understanding is it's difficult.
With NEMRIC, right?
Right.
Right,
so
to,
it's
to
difficult.
pay someone out of whatever the direct deposit, whatever that process has to go through with our treasurer's office, pay her, so she's keeping track of it, and I think there'll be a bill back, but it would be nice eventually to get a software where it just takes all of Emily's pay rate from the utility, and it's not this accounting transfer.
Right.
Just can't do it yet.
So speaking of accounting transfers, that was the second part of my question. The utility owes the town of St. Albans a lot of money.
They will pay him back.
Yeah.
By like October?
I think we're gonna look into see how payments are coming in. Everyone who got a bill for more than $1,000 is allowed to pay quarterly.
So it might take until the holidays.
Right.
As long
But-
as we kind of know what's
Yeah, so the money's definitely coming back.
Right.
We're waiting. It's actually kind of worked out ironically about what the town owes. The utility has to go back to the town for the first 3 or 4 months startup costs. So whenever the town's bill comes through your warrants, you potentially could see a lot of it come right back later on for the utility.
Well,
to pay
that's
that
it.
off.
I mean, because we didn't, like that fund balance sheet that we saw didn't have, a due to from
Yeah.
for the utility. So that extra money essentially could just be a pass through to pay the bill for this year without having to say, Alan, find us $67,000 in your budget. We might already have that in it. But, I mean, research that, but just that if we could by the first meeting in September have a pretty clear picture as to how that's
Yeah,
all
I
gonna
mean,
work.
bills are due the 15th, August 15th. We're going to wait for compliance. We think after people realizing that they didn't get the 2 postcards, we're still anticipating probably having to mail bills again. We aren't charging late fees this year, just because it's new, so there's no penalty. But we are going to be, we'll give them a month or 2 and then go back after the other ones.
So the late fees, does that just go into the stormwater fund?
Eventually.
And
We
then
haven't-
they'll go
we haven't
into
added
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Before we add one, it'll come to you guys for a policy decision and all that. But
Well, it should be in the ordinance already, isn't it?
yeah,
Speaking of the
so
ordinance, do you think this winter is when we'll probably have time to open that up?
my
again,
guess is
Emily?
this fall.
Okay,
Emily's
but
really
that's
busy
something
right
where,
now with the-
obviously, yeah.
once we kind of get a handle on that, and we'll be in good shape.
So while we're rolling it out, we're kind of putting the enforcement and the public works director and all that parts on the back burner until we get the payments figured out and get the general fund reimbursed, and then we'll open the ordinance up and make some changes.
And then
Right.
you guys will have to decide, again, I think, again on the enforcement, how strong we want to be, at what point do we want to, there's a number of options we can take. for
If
those
somebody
who
doesn't
don't
pay, you can tax sale them.
You can tax sale them, it's utility.
Right.
It's legal to put the lien on their property.
The city of St. Albans could tax sale my house if I don't pay my affiliation fee of $400 something a year. They can sell my house. I mean, that's just the way it works.
We're not going there first, though.
No,
No.
we're going to try to avoid that.
No, absolutely
Hopeful
not,
for
but
voluntary compliance.
It's the same as a property tax. I mean, when people ask you what happens if you don't pay it, I got a little smart mouth with somebody at the golf course a couple weeks ago and said, "We'll sell your house," and it didn't go very well for me. So I would recommend we don't say that.
Ooh, didn't get black eyes.
No, not yet. You're literally gonna do that over $50? We have to.
It'll hold up a closing on the house. They don't have it paid.
No, it's a cloud on your title.
Yep.
Literally.
Correct.
And the title companies are starting to ask for the bills
Yeah.
when they're doing their research now to make sure they're in good standing.
It's a very serious thing. Okay, so
So we move on. We're good. Killed that one
So-
a little bit today. All right. Awesome. The
that's a big thing.
second to last one, it is. I felt we talked about it. It was good to have it on here. We copied on a number of Act 250 filings. I added one that wasn't on there initially to let people know who've been asking, who haven't driven by our site, that we actually are going to start moving some dirt here for the new town hall. So you're going to see a construction trailer. It's not there yet, I don't think. And some equipment. We're still scheduling the groundbreaking. We're just waiting for some politicians to get back to us, and get some hard hats actually
Cool stickers.
covered with logos. But we are
Hats
going to.
here. It's the
Yeah.
it's the decoration.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. So we're close. People were actually eager in a positive way, they want to see something go. So.
Alan did some work to help us save some money and get the site ready for construction. And
Right. Yep.
Thank
So
you.
there is that access road that's temporary in case anyone asks. I just didn't want anyone to think we were changing the plans. And that's kind of it right now. Got a lot going on. Seems like people are wide awake after the long COVID sleep, and they're coming out to share with us when they're happy and when they're not.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it goes. I guess it's up to you now. The schedule.
Okay, so we've got Monday, August 16th, and Wednesday, September 8th, due to Labor Day. The 8th, I might not be here. We're 6 weeks today away from the due date. So everybody that knows that we're expecting just keeps looking at me with like dead eyes and saying your life's gonna change. They used to joke with me when I got married and say, your life's gonna change, but this is like, no, your life's gonna change. It's very sobering. So looking forward to that.
Joke.
Yeah. So chair's report. Concerned with Northwest Regional Planning Commission making ongoing comments related to pedestrian infrastructure on Act 250 permits in that process. So Corey had reached out to the professional head of NRPC, Catherine Dimitrick, and didn't hear back. I reached out, in the morning last week, and then Corey got a phone call like 20 minutes after I sent the email, so they had a good 45-minute discussion or so. It was over an hour, actually. We've identified some areas where we'll probably never agree with NRPC staff, but it reminds us that we need to make an appointment. Sarah took a job being the town manager of Fairfax, and we're really happy for her, but that means that she can't reasonably be expected to represent two municipalities on the same board. So we're going to need to send a replacement to be without Vogel. So we've got to recruit for that and make sure it's the right person and that it's somebody that can help us bridge the gap, because there are gaps between our policy objectives and what regional planning would like to see. A comment that scared me was that we need to move away from car-centric infrastructure. Like, that is a little bit of a leap. If you wanted to say that you need to have 10 EV stations for every 1,000 people in your community by 2035 and set that as a regional goal for us to work towards, like we'd have to have 65 to 70 charging stations around town in 15 years. Tell me that and we can work with that. But to say, we need to make general policy objectives to move away from car-centric infrastructure is a very scary statement. Given the rural spread of our community, it's not possible. So there's a little comment.
All of Franklin County.
Yeah, which is scary. So we think there's alliances to be made on NRPC as we get a political operator up there to work with Al, and we think that we can really use NRPC as a vehicle to deliver priorities instead of maybe something to ignore as it works against our priorities, which is how we viewed it for the last few years.
I think the chasm is closable.
It's just going to take some work.
I think it needs work. It needs continual conversation, which Carrie, myself, and Catherine have committed to. And I think part of it will also be seeing a true commitment from the town to address pedestrian infrastructure.
Well, in that conversation you had, I don't think you'd mind me saying that the crux of one of the major disagreements was how we implement pedestrian infrastructure in the growth centers, and the remark from NRPC was, if you don't commit to it, you don't have to have growth centers.
Right.
And we don't want to lose our growth centers. So we're committing to a funding source, we're working on a ballot question, we're working on affirming our commitment to NRPC and how it
public
works.
knowledge, what we're looking to try, the chasm we have is they require certain projects to build the sidewalk frontage. We're not necessarily opposed to that, but we'd rather have them invest those dollars into priority projects. So instead of building the sidewalk in front of Handy's GMC, let's say, have that money to put across the road. And the credit union has to build their frontage once the sidewalk gets to their frontage. We probably would almost beat Burger King with the actual frontage. And so I think the sidewalk actually picks up just after Burger King. So that whole sidewalk that's really expensive to connect the city out there could be getting paid for backwards, which probably makes the most sense. Kid gets out of the car and Price Chopper wants that, or Burger King or whatnot. there's a place to go. You get to Dunkin' Donuts probably with some of these projects happening in Franklin Park West that they're trying to request the sidewalks on. So there would be a way, and from talking to the engineers and the business owners, they'd rather fund it that way. So you could add, basically what we asked for was the easement and the money to come into a fund, so that if we ever do decide to build, we have an easement, but we're gonna build our priority sidewalks first before we get to these other ones, because we've got a significant amount of projects in our bike and ped plan, which were reshuffled but weren't really changed this year.
So I had specifically asked in my original email to Catherine that NRPC staff reach out to the town, not for the sake of allowing us to edit their comments, but to be able to give our input before they make Act 250 comments, and that was brushed off with a cold shoulder. So that'll be something that we keep discussing.
Mhm.
You know, how do we communicate about these comments before they're made? Is there information that we may have or a perspective that we could give that could influence it? And, you know,
Does NRPC have a statement or have a stated goal about working towards increased public transportation networks within Franklin County? Grand
So the
Island?
big is the growth centers. They want the bike and ped working growth centers, which is totally great. But again, they're looking to build sidewalks in places that won't connect to anything else, where we can further the connectivity goal.
Right.
At the same time, before we invest in these other ones. But their goal is basically any development in the growth center is going to have a sidewalk.
well, that's a bylaw too. I mean,
Yeah,
we
but-
created
Yeah,
that bylaw.
correct.
But in the
without
Act 250,
any-
and they're enforcing it harder than we might have, said, oh, that
Envisioned.
crosswalk works.
I mean,
and that works.
That bylaw went into effect in 2015. We've been playing catch up with it ever since.
We wanted it strategic. For instance,
Right.
we don't want a sidewalk we don't think it's necessary on both sides of a road. One side, pick a side of the road and make sure people can get to that point, but there's no real need in
When you
most
have
of
none,
our,
you got to focus on one.
well, in most of our areas, there isn't a need to have it on both sides of the road.
And I had a conversation with an Act 250 commissioner today about it too, and expressed their concerns about it. Then.
Fair enough.
And what we see as a solution that's fair in our mind.
I just had like a thought thinking about public transportation and sidewalks. I don't know if there's a miss on our part when we're thinking about bike and ped plan and any kind of expectations or design expectations for especially sidewalks and
For the
bike.
bus stops.
Yeah, so making sure that bus stops are factored into it, and I'm not sure, there's probably a lot of calculus that goes into picking bus stops. And I'm not sure if buses are always the way to go. I'm still intrigued by the proposal or the presentation that we got at the end of last year about what Montpelier's trying.
That Uber model.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that seems like it might be an interesting fit.
There's
depending on
also,
how it's
I mean,
going.
bike lanes, and a lot of it's like getting easements and expanding road. We'd have to widen roads to paint in bike path lanes, and then Allen screws out painting every year, and they can't find paint this year. And,
It's
you
well,
know,
that's
it-
the other
Yeah.
part of. Carrie has a private road that's reached out to say, we're willing to make really expensive improvements if the town will say that when we make the improvements, you'll take the road over. Now, we obviously can't say anything other than our policies are the policies, and if you meet the policies, it's at the discretion of the select board because that's the literal law as it's written. But it calls into question, when Emily's not responding to 400 emails a week, it would be really nice to have a strategic planning session regarding private roads, since it's something that, we have over 70 private roads within active stormwater permits. It's going to be something that comes up. If our takeover model, if you will, I'd love to hear what her expert insight into the stormwater aspect of it is, because I read today in her memo that if we incorporate a stormwater system, privately owned stormwater system into the town, we can incorporate it into our MS4 permit, which eliminates the $160 to $480 a year fee for the homeowners, is my understanding from her memo. So how many little tidbits of information are there out there that she knows that she'd be willing to walk us through? And after having heard all that, are there changes to how we, she might say, you don't want to take these systems over. You want to specifically, exclude them for these reasons, or you want to take over as many as you can for the following reasons. Or if you take on so many per year, the staffing requirements for maintenance become this. It's just an ongoing discussion. But, the last thing under my report is happy birthday, Carrie.
Thanks. Stop celebrating after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Happy birthday.
This is the way I choose to spend my birthday. Maybe not every year.
That's funny. But, yeah, I don't have anything else. So we have an executive session for contractual personnel, contractual and personnel. So.
And if we could, for the first item that I'd like to talk about, I'd like to invite Alan.
Okay.
Case
You want to
you have
invite
question.
You want to invite the three since they're already here?
Sure.
Okay. So
You
we
might
need
wanna
a
leave.
motion to
I go
executive
to
to.
class.
Okay, yeah, you have to go.
Okay, so you're going to class. All right. Going for his MBA.
That's my idea. Fun after work. Go take another class.
Well, you're working on your MBA. That's real.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
See ya. So if anyone would like to make a motion and then invite the town manager and the Department of Public Works Director.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues where premature general public knowledge of the subject matter would place the town or person involved at a substantial disadvantage, and further move to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of Vermont statutes, and to invite the town manager and the Department of Public Works Director. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.